at Hilton? I hope so. Maybe.
Lamar Jackson is trying to stay in the MVP race for his third time. Remember, he won a second MVP last season, but they fell short in the AFC Championship game. As head coach John Harbaugh, very high expectations for the quarterback. Honestly, just listen. It's crazy.
The vision that we have together is that Lamar Jackson is going to become and be known and be recognized as the greatest quarterback ever to play in the history of the National Football League. That's the vision, all right? It's going to happen by Lamar, his work ethic, and his brilliant talent.
Harbaugh for president. Didn't sound like that he was going for president, like he was just.
It sounded like he believed it. It sounded like he believed it. The vision is that he would be the greatest quarterback ever in the history of the National Football League. He'd be recognized. He sets a vision. Joy, I don't think that's realistic, personally. So let me ask you, and honestly, I can't wait of all the takes that we will hear today and hearing a little bit about what you were about to say. I'm most excited to hear this or for the world to hear it because I've heard a little bit of it. What are realistic expectations for Lamar Jackson?
Realistic. What is the saying? You have all the quotes. Aim for the moon, land on a star.
Yeah.
Okay. See, I nailed that one. Yeah. I don't think you should aim low. So for him to say that, for him to have that vision with Lamar, I'm okay with that. But when we talk about greatest to ever do something, and we have overused this word, I think this word this term is about as overused as culture, is overused as swag. We constantly just throw these words out there and use them, and they lose their luster. Woke, right? Nobody even knows what it means anymore. To be the greatest player to ever play the game, we already have that, right? That's Tom Brady. And pursuant of that is Lamar Jackson's peer in Patrick Mahomes. And while they have similar individual awards, as team awards go, team accomplishments go, they are not in the same boat. So to me, a realistic expectation for Lamar, something that I hope for him, and I think he will actually accomplish, is I think he will be the dual threat quarterback of this generation that breaks through to win a Super Bowl. But I also think that his influence on the game of football, when that happens, will be more far-reaching than we can quantify with championships or MVPs or notoriety. When you think of someone like a Steph Curry, very few people refer to Steph Curry as the greatest player of all time. They might call him the greatest shooter of all time, but no one really refers to Steph as the greatest player of all time. However, most people unanimously agree that his influence on the game can be seen on every single level. Internationally, he's transformed how the game of basketball is played, how it is evaluated, what type of players you look for in the draft, what type of skills you're supposed to have, how you have to defend, even if you are a naturally big player. You have to be able to get out to the wing. Big players are expected to shoot threes now. In a time 10, 20 years ago, if you were a 7-footer shooting a three, get on the bench. You are not allowed to shoot. You're not allowed to shoot threes. Now it's expected. So his influence on the game of basketball is almost impossible to quantify, but it is palatable and we can see it. And I think that Lamar Jackson has been one of those players that everyone has had a very difficult time evaluating, has had a very difficult time defining. It's why he's been so polarizing in what he is and what he's capable of, although he has 2 MVPs in the league already. Yeah. I think that his influence, when he is able to win a Super Bowl, will be so much more far-reaching that it really will feel minimizing to have him be argued about in the GOAT conversation, because that's really what it feels like with Steph. Like, why are we minimizing Steph to, like, is he better than LeBron? Is he better than Michael? We know what Steph is, and he has his own orbit and legacy that really matters, and the comparison kind of takes away from that.
I think it's incredibly well said, because I'll piggyback on that. I think the realistic expectations for me with Lamar is just almost close the gap between you and Pat in present form. Right now, we know that Pat is the best quarterback playing football, but Lamar, can you close the gap enough to where if the Ravens give you a good team, you can get the Ravens over the hump? I rewatched the AFC Championship game last year, and I was watching different people break it down. The difference in that game was Patrick Mahomes was better than Lamar Jackson. The Ravens' defense was good enough to win. I think they held the Chiefs to 19 points, 17 points, but it was that play. Patrick Mahomes didn't just throw a back shoulder play, he threw a back kneecap play. Without that throw, that's not a touchdown against inarguably the best nickelback in football, but one of the best safeties in football in Kyle Hamilton, an all-pro. That is an all-pro reaching his peak versus an all-pro past his peak. But because of Patrick Mahomes, that's a touchdown. I'm thinking about this. We're coming on Olympic season. They've seen the play enough times. You can take us to the gym. Because we're coming on Olympic season, I was thinking about Usain Bolt. Usain Bolt, fastest man to ever run the 100 meters. Yeah. And we knew Usain was going to be faster than Tyson Gay or Justin Gatlin, the fastest American at the time. But if USA was going to put together a good enough roster, hey, can you just close the gap anchor leg between you and Usain Bolt so that y'all can still win? Lamar, the Ravens gave you a good enough roster. They gave you a good enough roster. You run an anchor like Pat's run an anchor. Can you close the gap enough that with Madubuike, that with Roquan Smith, that with Kyle Hamilton, that with Marlon Humphrey, that with Derrick Henry, that with all those wide receivers, can you close the gap enough that the Ravens can get over the hump? My expectation, Shady, is that Lamar can close the gap enough to get the Ravens a Super Bowl.
Yeah, that was great. That was great said. Well said. I mean, before we can talk about him being the GOAT of all time, it's things he has to do now. Like win an AFC Championship game, get to the Super Bowl. I think a realistic expectation for Lamar Jackson, changing the narrative that, you can be a dual-threat quarterback and win a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
You could be a dual-threat quarterback and be one of the best in the league. We look at guys like Cam Newton, right? We got guys like Michael Vick, Randall Cunningham. All these guys, we talk about how special they were, but nobody ever really puts these guys as the elites of the elites. I think Lamar Jackson can change that, though, right? I think if he gives you a championship, right, 1 or 2, right, more playoff wins, 2 MVPs, maybe add another MVP, and then a Super Bowl, we can now put him in there like, okay, you can have his style of football and be one of the best quarterbacks in this game and win championships. That's like the biggest question mark when you get a quarterback that may take the hits that Michael Vick and Lamar Jackson have taken, or Cam Newton's, right? And with their style of play, can they be the best in the league, right? Can they win a Super Bowl? Well, Lamar can change that, and I think he has a talent. I think he's good enough to do that. So when you ask him about what we look him to do, it's more of that. I don't know if we really want to talk about the greatest of all time because he got to do a lot to beat that, right? And that's Tom Brady, and it's a guy and his side of the field with the Chiefs that he just can't beat. So before we get to all that, let's just worry about being the best Lamar Jackson he can be.
Yeah, for me, I mean, obviously Harbaugh and Lamar Jackson is really, really close. So you're going to talk high about your quarterback. Lamar Jackson is a special, special talent at the quarterback spot, whether you like his game or not, running, throwing, whatever it may be, whether you like his game or not. This comment, though, this is the comment that you say after you win a Super Bowl. So we're coming into the training camp after we win a Super Bowl. Hey, man, I sat down with Lamar. We trying to be the greatest ever. Then we can sit here like, they did just win one. And get back to. We shouldn't be talking about none of that until Lamar Jackson at least wins 1 Super Bowl. And I think realistic expectations is to win a Super Bowl. I think we all can sit up here and say, at one point in Lamar Jackson's career, from what we've seen right now, that he is going to win a Super Bowl. Or we think he's capable of winning a Super Bowl, Lamar Jackson. So that's realistic expectations. You've been to an AFC Championship. Obviously, you have to win one of those. But I think the talent that Lamar Jackson has and the roster that they will have around him, he will have an opportunity to win a Super Bowl. But greatest ever? And you don't have none yet, and you ain't never even been to one yet, and you ain't never even won an AFC championship yet, y'all know I fight for my life up here with Aaron Rodgers, but at least I can say he won one. Let's get to one, let's win one, and then we can have a conversation trying to chase up some other ones.
I'm just trying to, Lamar is under so much pressure just naturally, just normally, right? Because who he is.
Yeah.
Like, why are you making these statements? Because I like Harbaugh. I'm just trying to figure out, what was the purpose of doing that?
It's interesting. I mean, at least he ended it and said, and by the grace of God and God's will,
God is good.
It will happen.
God is good, though.
He interjected
all the time.
He interjected
but
the supernatural.
But he also has his favorites, you know.
He does. You know what's interesting, Joy, and James, Shady, Joy, I'll need y'all's help with this. I was thinking and writing down names because I want the viewer to have a tangible reality of what Joy was saying, Lamar changing the game. I think about Drew Brees on a more micro level.
Yeah.
Baker Mayfield and Kyler Murray probably got drafted #1 overall because Drew Brees existed. Drew Brees showed the world that, wait a second, a short quarterback, short, under 6'1", under 6'2", can play well at a high level in the NFL. Jordan Love, Trey Lance, both got drafted because of Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
Like, Trey Lance is not getting drafted where he got drafted if not for Pat. They looked at the tangibles, they looked at the measurables, they looked at the style of play, they saw similarities.